Welcome back. We're on deck. This is exam 79. We're going to cover questions 7 through 11. Question number 7. Which one of the following is an assumption required by the journalist's argument? Remember, when you're dealing with assumptions, the conclusion is what matters. That's what you're affirming. So let's see what we have here. Put in your slash marks. Okay, here's what the journalist says. The new mayor is undeniably bold. Okay, he's bold. We're told he's bold. His assertions are made with utter certainty and confidence. So it's descriptive. His assertions are made with utter certainty and confidence. And he is bold. While these kinds of assertions, so the assertions now we're talking with speaking with utter certainty and confidence, while these kinds of assertions may make him popular with the public, so they may make you popular with the public, they also demonstrate he is not an introspective person. And that's where the argument ends up. The argument ends up with the conclusion, he's not introspective. So, in order for you to make the case that he's not introspective, right, having already said that there are certain kind of assertions that he makes, right? I mean, if you go back and you break this down, the assertions are made with utter certainty and confidence. Then the next sentence is these kinds of assertions, the kinds that are made with utter certainty and confidence. These kinds of assertions, they may make him popular with a public comma, and then you see that word they again, which means you're going back to they refers to the assertions. So these assertions that are made with utter certainty and confidence also demonstrate he is not introspective. And so likely that's where they're going. You got to focus on the conclusion here is that the person's not introspective, and the assumption is going to gravitate to the conclusion. Okay, so I'm done with that, and I would go with that connection. So what does A say? A says introspective people do not make assertions with utter certainty and confidence. And yeah, that statement must be true for the conclusion to be valid here, that the new mayor is not introspective. And if you go back and say, why are you saying he's not introspective? When you go back along that chain of reasoning, right, it's because he makes these assertions. So I think what's tough in number 7 is, well, one is just general awareness that assumptions require you to really get the conclusion. And 2, that I'm inferring that a bunch of people would have thought the conclusion here is that the new mayor is undeniably bold. But that's not where the argument ends. You know what I'm saying? The argument starts on that assertion. It ends on, and therefore it doesn't say therefore, but that he's not introspective. So A is the answer. Slow down and learn how to read this stuff. You're reading in a different way, and the writer is writing in a different way. Let's look at the other choices. B, politicians who make assertions with utter certainty and confidence are popular with the public. Well, it says it may make him popular with the public. It doesn't say they are popular with the public. So it may make him popular, does not mean that it will make him popular, or that they are popular. C, people who are bold make public assertions with utter certainty and confidence. And again, I'm thinking a lot of people will pick C, because the mistake you're making is you're misidentifying the conclusion as the new mayor is undeniably bold. Again, understand the conclusion is where this thing ends up. Now, it can end up in the first sentence, right? But it's got to be where the reasoning brought you, and the reasoning brings you here to he's not introspective. D, people whose assertions are uncertain and lack confidence are introspective, and we have no knowledge. We're not describing people who are introspective. We don't know anything about people who are introspective. We're given information about people who are not introspective. And finally, E, politicians who are not bold are unpopular with the public. Again, on the most basic level, you could dismiss this because this is about people who are bold. Set aside the fact that it's really got to go to the conclusion. And in the absence of some reference to introspection, it's not going to go to the conclusion, and therefore it can't be the answer. So the answer in 7 is A. Take a look at number 8. Number 8 here. Which one of the following is true most strongly support which one of the following? So stop, right, and say, what are they asking me to do? Shoot me. What are they asking me to do? Which one of the following is true most strongly support which one of the following? The statements above, I'm sorry. The statements above have true support. So they're asking you to draw a conclusion, and the conclusion is the conclusion most strongly supported by the evidence. So, okay. You're going to see it, I don't know, maybe 3 times on the test. There's no escaping it. Here it goes. While studying a large colony of whatever the monkeys are, I don't know how to say macaque, I don't care, the monkeys, right? Whatever, when studying a large colony of those monkeys, scientists interacting with baby monkeys under a week old, specific group, baby monkeys under a week old, found that the babies would imitate some, but not all of the scientist's actions. I got it. I don't need him, I got it. The babies readily smack their lips. If I had lips, I would smack them, but God didn't send me down with lips. The baby readily smacked their lips and stuck out their tongues when the scientist did that. So they imitated the scientist with the lips and the tongue, but stared impassively when the scientists opened and closed their mouths or made hand gestures. So they didn't imitate, they imitated some but not all of what they did, the scientists. Of these 4 kinds of actions, only lip smacking and sticking out their tongues are used by adult, whatever they are, macaques, when interacting with the baby. Okay, and you're done. I mean, to me, this is pretty clear, right? You're saying, well, what follows from that? And you say to me, you take these monkeys, they're under a week old, right? And you do these 4 things. And the baby monkeys imitate 2 of the 4 things that the humans are doing, right? And then you say, well, gosh, those 2 things that they're imitating are the 2 things that the parents who are raising them are doing. So doesn't it sound like what's strongly supported from that is that the baby monkey are following the humans when the humans basically are following the parents of the baby monkeys? And I'm done. That's it. Good night, lights out. I don't need this guy. This is not a test on philosophy. Just saying. So go directly to the answer choice here, which is E, which are the baby macaques, right? Under a week old, that's the group. Only imitate human gestures also used by adult macaques. Yeah, that's what follows from this. Okay. Let's look at the other choices. A, the babies under a week old are natural mimics of whatever they see. That's just stupid. Don't do that, right? Because then they'd be doing all 4, human things. B, the babies under a week old cannot imitate hand gestures because they do not yet control the necessary muscles. Oh, please. That's what's most strongly supported. Don't you have to infer a bunch of stuff from that? That's a very aggressive inference to get to B. Could it be true? Sure, it could be true. Is that what's most strongly supported? Not in a million years. See, adults use lip smacking and sticking out the tongue to entertain the infants. How in God's name would you know that they were doing that to entertain the infants? I don't know why they're doing it. They're doing it. I don't know why. This is really asking you to speculate why the adult's doing it. Okay. D, the babies under a week old mistake the scientists interacting with them for the adults. Well, if they mistook the scientists, wouldn't they do all 4? So again, I'm not seeing a heavy lift here. I'm saying, maybe it's a pain in the ass, an easy answer. But if you do the analysis prior to leaving that argument, you're fine. So again, the way you brief is go directly to the credited answer choice. That's the way you brief, which is to prepare. So that when you take the test, you're prepared enough, when you can, to pull the trigger. And again, it's not a question you have to pull the trigger. You know, if answer choice E had been A, would I have pulled the trigger? Probably not. Probably not. But you know, it would have armed me, would have equipped me if A, you know, if E had been A, right? To say when I look at B, C, D, and E, I'd be looking at B, C, D, and E to dismiss them, saying, you know what, I'm like 97% sure I've already got the answer. Could they come up with something more strongly supported? Yes, they could. It's really hard though. Okay, question number 9. Which one of the following most accurately expresses the conclusion drawn to the argument? Okay. My favorite, right? Because basically what you're doing is just getting to, okay, the thing being explained. What is being explained? The explanation is the reasoning, the thing being explained is the conclusion. Here we go. Put your slash marks in. Some scientists believe that small humanoid skeletons found on an Indonesian island are the remains of human beings with a growth disorder. You're just giving that as a fact. That's what some scientists believe. Okay. They stop. You need to reread it. That's fine. So we find these small skeletons of humans. They're on an Indonesian island. And some scientists, not all, but some believe that they are the remains of human beings with a growth disorder. Got it. It is more likely that they represent a distinct human species that became smaller over time due to environmental pressure. That's the bloody conclusion, right? You're saying, no. I mean, we got to keep reading. But, you know, you're saying, no, it wasn't a growth disorder. Some scientists are wrong. Well, now I have to show, right, reasoning as to why some scientists are wrong. So, yes, you keep reading, but you stop and you say, you know what, the conclusion is going to be, it is more likely that the small humanoid skeletons represent a distinct species that grew small over time because of environmental pressure. I mean, they don't have to use all those words. That's the conclusion. Now what you're looking at, if that's the conclusion, what's got to follow is evidence in support of the conclusion. Next sentence. These skeletons do not fit the pattern of known growth disorders. That is, if they don't represent the pattern of known growth disorders, that supports the conclusion that they're smaller because of environmental pressure. Then final sentence. And the evidence suggests that certain fox and mouse species on the island have evolved into smaller versions of their common counterparts, and that is, by analogy, this could happen, this has happened to other species, and therefore may well have happened to the humans. I'm so done. Now, look at the credit. There can only be one main conclusion. They can't give you two answer choices, each of which states the main conclusion. There can only be one. And I got it. Now go directly to the credited answer choice. It's B. It is more likely that the humanoid skeletons represent a distinct human species than that they are the remains of human beings with a growth disorder. Got it. Okay. Now let me read everything else. But if I got the B, I'd be home. I'd be gone. A. Some scientists believe that the humanoid skeletons are the remains of human beings with a growth disorder. No, it's not a growth disorder. That's not what did it. C. The humanoid skeletons do not fit the pattern of known growth disorder. Well, that's, again, if you go back, what they've done here, choice A is sentence number 1. That's, you know, which is, okay, that was the position of some scientists, right? That is a fact that was going to be disputed. Not a fact. Well, it is a fact some scientists believe that, right? But the role in the argument is that was going to be disputed by the second sentence, which was the conclusion. Choice C is the third sentence, that the skeletons do not fit the pattern of known growth disorders. The purpose is that's not the conclusion. It's evidence in support of the conclusion. D. Certain fox and mouse species on the Indonesian island had evolved into smaller versions of their common form. Hello, that's evidence in support of the conclusion, which is the second sentence. And then E. Environmental pressure can cause species living on islands to become smaller over time. You know, no. Okay. Yeah, maybe, but islands, this is about this particular island, this is about humanoids. B is so clearly the answer. Okay, question number 10. Which one of the following, if true, would most strengthen the argument? Okay, slash marks, I want to strengthen the argument. What do I got here? I've got the more sunlight our planet reflects back into space, the cooler the global atmosphere tends to become. Okay. Sunlight goes up, we get cooler. Snow and ice, so I'm specifically directed now to snow and ice. Snow and ice reflect much more sunlight back into space than do ocean water or land without snow cover. So this is saying, okay, there's a condition over here that reflects a lot more sunlight back up there than this condition does. So it's a relationship. One is relative to the other. Okay. Because of that, because of the relative nature, the comparative nature of these two things, right? One being snow and ice, and the other being ocean water and land without snow on it. Because of that, right? Therefore, the greater the area of Earth's surface that is covered with snow and ice, the greater I have this, right? The cooler on average the global temperature is likely to become. And we want to support that it's going to get cool. That the more we have over here, right? The more snow, the more ice. You know, which also implies the less you would have over here, right? Because obviously the more ice you have, the less ocean water you'd have, the more snow you'd have, the less non-snow covered land you have. Okay, and I'm done. I don't know. You know, again, when you're asked to weaken or strengthen an argument, you can't predict what they're going to do because they can bring a fact in from out of the blue. So, but what am I really focused on? The role of snow and ice comparative to the role of ocean water and land that's not snow covered. That's what I'm focused on. Okay. Hey, I'm sorry. Let's now just go to the answer choice. Right. The answer choice here is C. Right. And C says we strengthen this argument by establishing that ocean water and land heated by sunlight in turn warm the Earth's atmosphere. Yeah, because you're saying it's not neutral. I mean, that supports that then the existence of snow and the existence of ice is going to cool it, right? Because one's inverse to the other. And if you have so you know, if ocean water and dry and land that's not snow covered, if it were neutral, it had really no effect on sunlight, then that would not strengthen the argument. But if you're saying, which C says, that ocean water and land heated by sunlight in turn warms the atmosphere, right? Well, then the more snow, right, and the more ice, the cooler the atmosphere. So that absolutely strengthens the argument. Okay. Again, I'm not saying you would form that in your mind. You would not. You have to read all five, but you can't read all five until you are focused like a laser beam. Again, you've got to be on all fours. You've got to get this argument on all fours, which is it's snow and bloody ice. A, does this strengthen the argument? Most strengthen it. Low atmospheric temperatures are required for the formation of clouds that result in snow. No, it's about the relationship of snow and ice and cool ocean and non-snow covered land and more. B, other factors besides the reflectivity of ice and snow affect the cooling of the Earth's atmosphere, and that may well be the case. But it doesn't help this argument, because this argument is not other factors, it's snow and ice. D, the atmosphere derives most of its heat from the passage of sunlight through it. Who cares? It's snow and ice versus not snow and ice, you know, ocean water and dry land. And E, lighter colored soil reflects more sunlight back into space than does darker colored soil. If you pick E, I beg you, don't ever do that again. I mean, the only reason I can think of picking E is because you're looking for F. Yeah, okay. And the final question here, and this is 11, which is dialogue provides the most support that Nick and Pedro, oh, it's Pedro, yes, disagree over something. So let's see what they disagree about. Nick says, the Pincus family and their construction company have supported our university financially for decades. God bless them. Go Pincus. Okay, that's a fact. The university should not give the contract for building its new library to the family's main competitor. That's the conclusion, right? Okay. And here's why. Doing so would be disloyal to a friend of the university. So the conclusion here is, don't give the contract to a competitor. The reasoning is it would be disloyal to a friend, and you're establishing the friend by the fact that they have supported us financially. Okay. So, but the real reason here is it would be disloyal. Pedro. Accepting a donation, which clearly the Pincus family gave, right? Accepting a donation does not oblige the university to give the donor any special privileges. You don't have to, it doesn't force us, oblige us to give us special privileges. If it did, then it would really be a charitable, then it really wouldn't be a charitable contribution. We should award the contract to whatever company makes the most competitive bids. You got to stop and say, well, so what do they disagree about? And, I'm kind of going with what Pedro is saying here is we're not obligated to give a donor special privileges. That's his position. We're not obligated to do that. Now, Nick doesn't use the word obligated. He doesn't use the word obligated, but he says we're loyal, right? He says it would be disloyal if we didn't give it. So I don't exactly have this because the language is not perfectly the same, but the concept of one person saying we should do this out of loyalty to me implies an obligation, right? And that the other person says we shouldn't act out of an obligation, that appears to be the conflict. But that's it. Okay, so I'm done. Again, some of these, your analysis is going to produce a much clearer vision of the outcome than others. The goal is to get good at this. So let's see now with C. The answer is C. Let's see what it says. He says, the acceptance of donations places a university under a special obligation to the donor. So clearly, Pedro agrees with that statement, that the acceptance of the donation does place a university under special obligation, right? Does Nick disagree with that? And the answer is Nick does disagree with that, because Nick's saying that it would be disloyal. It would simply be disloyal not to give the contract. Well, it would be disloyal to give the contract to the prime, to the main competitor of the family. So, the perfect fit? No, not perfect fit. Does it make sense? Yes. Now, here I would be reading all five and see what do they disagree about. A, loyalty should sometimes be a consideration in making business decisions. I don't see them disagreeing with that. Pedro's not saying loyalty should never be a consideration, and Nick is not saying it should always be a consideration. So they don't disagree with that. B, the Pincus family and their construction company donated money for the purposes of acquiring special privileges from the university. If you pick B, you're just not reading the way you're going to need to read it, right? Because you're just reading in your own prejudice. You're just reading in your own life circumstances. There's just nothing in here about the special privileges stuff. D, the university should be should be more grateful to donors with long history of financial support than to new donors. No how, no way. It's just not at all any evidence they agree or disagree about that. And E, the Pincus family construction company did not make the most competitive bid. You can infer that, but there's no evidence that they disagree about that. Nowhere does it say that, nowhere is Nick saying that this was or was not the most competitive bid. Nick's simply saying don't give it to their main competitor. And Pedro's talking about a principle. Pedro's not saying that this isn't the most competitive bid. It may be the most competitive bid. He's saying, but you don't give it out of a false sense of loyalty. So the answer to number 11 is C. And we're done.